It's the talk of the town, Grand Rapids. Time to talk with R.G. Holliman on GRTV Grand Rapids and WKTV Wyoming Kentwood.
Hello, welcome to Time to Talk. I'm R.G. Holliman, and today is Wednesday, January 27th, 2016, and we are so glad that you could join us once again. We know we haven't been here in a little while because it's been snowing and the weather has been really bad every time it was time for us to do Time to Talk. But finally, the way got cleared for us today, and we are here and we are live, and we're so glad that you could join us again today. And I want to introduce my guest to you. My guest on my far right is Paul Hahn, who is the Executive Director of Healthy Homes Coalition, and that's located right here in Grand Rapids. And Paul, it's good to have you on Time to Talk. And of course, you're an old-time Community Media Center friend as well. And also we have Reverend David May, Dr. May actually, and Dr. May is the senior pastor at Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist Church right here in Grand Rapids, and he is also the advisor to the Grand Rapids chapter NAACP president. He also is a longtime activist, environmental racism activist, and we're going to find out more about exactly what that means and also his history with the Healthy Homes Coalition, how he helped to be a part of getting that started and helping it to grow. Gentlemen, it's good to have both of you here with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for us to be here.
Yes, and of course we've all heard about the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, and how the water is not only dirty, it is poison, and it has killed people. It has literally killed people, and there's a lot of finger pointing, and there's a lot of questions to be answered, and also there is a lot of concern, which there should be. But the thing about Flint is now the attention from around the world is focused on Flint and what's going on there, and people are also reaching out to help, which is a very good thing. But also it brings to mind what's going on here. What's going on here in Grand Rapids? We can't say that Flint, oh, that's so far away, that'll never happen to us. Actually, there is lead poisoning in Grand Rapids. Did you know that? Yes, and we're going to find out more about that right today and give you an opportunity to ask questions, 616-459-4881, and also to make some brief comments as well. So let's find out about that. Paul, there's lead poisoning in Grand Rapids. What's going on?
Yeah, so I'll start with a little bit of the big picture and we'll zoom in. In Kent County, the last year for which we have comprehensive numbers is 2013. And in that year, there were just over 550 kids that were affected by lead in Kent County. But we know that the concentration of the problem is in certain communities. And so, for example, in the 49507 zip code, I'll back up. 80% of those kids, those 550 kids, more than 400 of them are in Grand Rapids proper. And in the 49507 zip code, in that year, there were 157 kids lead poisoned. So what is that, about 1 in 4? Almost 1 in 3 of those kids lead poisoned in Kent County. We're in a very small geographical area.
Mm-hmm. And what age group are you talking about that has been affected by lead poisoning, and where is the lead coming from?
Yeah, it's an important question to ask because people sometimes think as adults that we can be affected. And I suppose we can, but overwhelmingly the problem is those 550 were children 0 to 5 years of age, birth through age 5. And they're getting it primarily 8, 9, 10 times out of 10. They're getting it from the paint in the home or the soil around the home that's been tainted by the paint peeling off the outside of that home for almost a century now. And they're getting it on their hands. Many of these kids, again, 8 out of 10 of these kids are 1 and 2 years of age. So oftentimes we think about, maybe that naughty 5-year-old peeling the paint and eating it. That's not what's happening. It's somebody who's just learning to crawl and to walk, and they're getting it on their hands, and they're putting in their hands in their mouths, and then they're being affected that way. So many of those kids, 1 and 2 years of age, very young years of age.
Okay. Is there mandatory testing, or is testing just strongly encouraged?
More the latter. There's strong guidance coming down from the federal government, and the state government echoes that. And so the requirement is if you live in the city of Grand Rapids, that child should be tested at 1 year of age and 2 years of age. If they've not been tested before, let's say they move into Grand Rapids from out of town and they're under the age of 5 or under, they should be tested. Okay, so in Grand Rapids, the expectation is universal testing for kids. When you get outside of Grand Rapids, then we start to look at other risk factors. Is the family on Medicaid or the child on Medicaid? And do they live in older housing? And there's a number of other questions. But a lot of that zeroes in on older housing.
Paul, can you say anything about what it costs for kids to get tested?
Yeah, it's at the Kent County Health Department right now. If the child's parent is taking WIC, that's a free test, and they do it right at WIC.
Okay.
If you're on Medicaid, Medicaid pays for it. If you have a commercial plan, it pays for it, and there's no copay because this is a preventive health care service. I shouldn't say there's no copay. In almost every situation, there's no copay. There may be an exception to that rule, but Medicaid pays for it, WIC pays for it, so there's really no excuse not to get that blood test.
Okay.
And if you're not in one of those programs, how does it get paid?
Yeah, if you right
What
now
does
in the
it
day
cost?
of after Affordable Care, virtually everybody has insurance, and children all have insurance, so it's something that insurance is going to pick up. Yeah, cost should not be a determining
Cost.
factor. The real great thing is that if for some reason the child is uninsured, Kent County Health Department, if you contact their childhood lead poisoning prevention program, they'll make sure that you're treated just like that child in WIC and you get that blood test. So contact the health department if any kind of payment is a concern.
Reverend May, you have been active in environmental racism issues.
Yeah.
Tell us what environmental racism is.
Well, let me first say that the activism that I've been most involved in had to do with racial justice and racism as a broader category. Within that category, there are certain strands, and environmental racism is one of those strands that affects people of color disproportionately to the other groups who are experiencing those same kinds of events. And environmental racism includes air pollution, where people have deposited dumps where they're located in communities of color more than or not outside the perimeter of those communities. And so those are some examples of environmental racism. But I also think that the conditions that Paul works with in lead poisoning in my mind, can also be described as an environmental condition and attached to the word racism, in part because of the population of people that it's infecting, and when there is a slow to no approach by the community and the city to really solve that problem. And so, so that for me classifies it as environmental racism. Contrary to what the governor says in Flint, that race has nothing to do with it. I think when it comes to lead race, there are implications that race does have something to do with it, particularly when they're not. So I would disagree with that.
Especially when you look at the area and the population that was affected is majority African American
and Hispanic,
and Hispanic,
and I think that to think that we've been dealing with this for 10 years and measure how far we moved the needle, I mean, I would make the assumption that if this was a community highly infected with poison that was poisoning children and killing people, and it was a white community, that there may be a more aggressive approach to trying to solve the problem, possibly. So I conclude that there is a race-based component to this issue of lead at such high levels, and I think Paul said that the condition of lead poisoning in our community in Kent County is the highest in the state of Michigan. Is that right?
Right
Paul?
here?
Well, in the 49507 zip code in the year 2013, that zip code of all the, 900 and something zip codes in Michigan was the highest in the state. In
For lead
2014,
poisoning.
it dropped to number 2, which is still, not a prize you wanna win.
Yes.
So a significant number of lead poisoning concentrated specifically in a certain area in Grand Rapids. Is the highest number of kids in the state.
And that's quite alarming. Do you think, Reverend May, that this crisis in Flint has made people kind of stand up and take attention?
Absolutely.
Pay attention.
Absolutely. I think that, first of all, I was at the meeting in Flint, at the town meeting last evening, and you can hear the horrendous cries, the images of pain, frustration. You can see all of that there, and with good reason. I mean, their water supply has been a problem for almost 2 years, and finally it's getting a stage, not just a stage in the state or the nation, but it's an international stage that has drawn attention to the horrendous suffering and death that's been going on in that community. On the other hand, the condition of lead poisoning is also a part of our culture here in Grand Rapids, and so it raises the issue, I think, in a way in which it's very heart-wrenching. At the NAACP, for example, we are currently working on a case of lead poisoning with an infant that is just a few months old, who has been tested and is at level 5, and a father who's at level 7. And when the father talked to the doctor, according to him, said, "I'm surprised you're not dead." I mean, that's the level of contamination that we're experiencing, and so we're working with that case right now. People need really understand how serious this issue is.
Yes.
And I think Flint helps us see that graphic picture of brain damage. This is a toxin, it's a neurotoxin, and it affects the brain. It not only affects the brain, it can affect the bones, the kidneys, it can affect behavior patterns, and it can actually cause seizures, it can cause death. I mean, it's a serious issue, and as Paul said, a high percent of the people that are being affected by this neurotoxin are children,
Yes.
very young children. And children in homes that have lead are at super high risk, in part because at that age, the body of a child is in its developmental state, metabolizes that at a higher rate than the older children. So
it becomes a part of their system.
Yes.
Yes.
And the symptomology of it is such that we have to understand that this is, in many cases, irreversible damage that is happening that can affect the child's learning capacities, their behavioral patterns, and just the whole package of healthy development is interrupted and damaged as a result of this. What's tragic also about it is that there's not enough community consciousness of the effects of this lead poisoning,
Okay.
that we see a sort of rising up of people. How do you not feel it when a person comes from a hospital to home, and within a few months, that young baby is infected and has put their potential at risk? How do you not feel that? You know, how do you not get concerned about the many children whose academic potential, whose physical health are jeopardized simply because we are not figuring out how to solve this lead problem in our homes.
Okay. We want you to know we're talking to Reverend David May, who is an activist for regarding environmental racism and also an advisor to the local NAACP president, and Paul Hahn, who is executive director of Healthy Homes Coalition right here in Grand Rapids. We're talking about lead poisoning that is happening and has been happening right here in Kent County. If you have questions, if you have comments, you can also comment on Flint as well. 616-459-4881. As Reverend May outlined so well, there's so many negative effects, Paul, of lead poisoning. And what can be done to prevent it? And what can be done to treat it? Okay, you go to the doctor, you find out your child has lead poisoning, then what can be done?
Right. I'm going to start with preventing it. And,
Yes.
and I don't want to be overly simple, but the way we prevent it is we've got to separate the lead from the kids. And so if the source is paint and housing, we've got to get that paint in a state that it's either removed from that house or that the kids can't get at it. And so that means, abating or remediating lead hazards in housing. So we have to figure out how to do that. And that's been kind of the drag on the system that I've seen over the years. Reverend May talked about this as you use the phrase cultural problem, right? I mean, we have grown numb to the fact that these hazards exist in housing, and maybe they don't exist in the neighborhoods where some of us might live, but they certainly exist in our community. And there's been a slow kind of turning of a blind eye to that problem, and that's the challenge that we have before us. Is we, now with Flint, it's like we've been woken up, and we need to redouble our efforts and say, how do we make sure that that next baby that comes home from the hospital when they go into their home, it doesn't contain that lead hazard, because you also asked about how do we then treat it. Reverend May said earlier, it's permanent damage. We can't undo the damage that was done by lead. If you know how a child's brain develops, neurological connections are in the process of being made during those early years of life. Those pathways are being made, and if lead interferes with the development of those pathways on a given day or a given month, that child does not get to go back and try to make those pathways again. They will have that disability. They may learn to cope with it, but they will still have to live with it. Just like anybody with a disability. They may learn to cope with a physical disability, but they still have to live with it, right? So now this child's got, one strike against them because of that situation. And then the challenge is how do we get services to that child and that child's family so that they can learn, they can progress through that educational system, and they can progress through life with the support necessary. I think that is probably the biggest opportunity that we have coming out of what's happened in Flint, because there has been a clear recognition from state government, including our local state senator David Hildenbrand, who chairs the Appropriations Committee, saying that of this $28 million going to Flint, a sizable chunk of that needs to go to making sure these kids have good educational support, that they're assessed as part of early on, that we know what damage was done cognitively, we know how that's going to impact them, and that then when they get into the educational system, that we are constantly paying attention to the fact that this happened 2, 3, 4, 5 years before they enter school, and we're providing them the services they need.
It is important to get that education out there. And of course, we've heard for years, get the lead out, get the lead out. And people just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then also a lot of fear maybe of homeowners and landlords. Well, if you come in, if I allow my house to be tested, something's going to happen, I might lose my home, or different things, or landlords might think I'll lose my income, or people will have to move out. What help is out there for homeowners to get their homes tested, get it addressed and taken care of?
So there's some programs that have come and gone, and there's still some money here from the state of Michigan. Historically, the city of Grand Rapids, since 2004, remember the day Reverend May was there as well when we celebrated the first federal dollars coming to Grand Rapids to fix houses. That money comes to the city of Grand Rapids, and the program is run through City Hall, where a landlord or a homeowner can approach them and say, I'm concerned about lead hazards. My child may not have been poisoned, but I don't want him or her to get poisoned, so I want to take care of this in advance. And they can sign up for that project, and that project helps them remove those hazards. There's a modest repayment, but there's also a grant to that, and there's no interest. So it's a very, very, very affordable program for the homeowner. And for landlords, there's a similar type of mechanism. So we can actually fix that problem. That program served 1,500 households to date, roughly. Currently, the city does not have federal funding. The funding that we had ran out the end of this past summer. We're seeking to apply again this winter and hope to be successful in bringing that money back. In the meantime, our organization, the Healthy Homes Coalition, along with our colleagues across the state, turned to state government 3 years ago, well, more than that, but 3 years ago, they heard our cry that the state needs to have some skin in the game. They need to put some money into childhood lead poisoning prevention and start fixing homes as well with state general fund dollars, and they've made that commitment. Over the last 3 years, they put $4.5 million into fixing homes statewide. $4.5 million to me sounds like a lot of money. I'd love to have it, right? But the reality is, with the magnitude of the problem, that's very helpful, but it's not clear. It's clearly not enough. When you're talking about $8,000-$10,000 to fix a home, we clearly need much more money than that to solve this problem. And that's why kids are still being lead poisoned in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
You hit the nail on the head. It's the money.
It's the
Reverend May, you want
money.
to add to that?
Just that the Flint event really helped me recalibrate around this condition that has been going on here for years, more than 10 years. And when I began to see the children and know that this is an irreversible condition, and mostly children that look like me, I just felt in my heart that we cannot any longer address this problem in slow motion. That we really need to become more aggressive in
And more
trying
vocal.
to and more vocal and more people. I think if they can feel the loss of the potential of our youth and their ability to contribute to a healthy, wealthy society,
I
then
have
that
heard
affects
that-
all of us.
Yes.
That's right.
You know, whether we live in one of those zones or not. We are raising up children, lead-poisoned children, who will have lead-based disabilities. You understand? And so we need to correct this problem, because these are the same children that could be our doctors, our lawyers, our bakers, our candlestick makers. These are people, young little children, who have the potential to be an active, creative, contributing part of the growth and the genius of this community that we live in.
And that's lost.
And that's being lost.
That's being
And
lost.
it's being lost almost in silence.
And I understand that this actually will affect children and their children 5 generations down. 5 generations.
Yes, yes. Now,
That is serious.
so I'm ready, and I'm helping. I'm working and volunteering with Paul and his organization, but the NAACP is also looking at how we can encourage this community to take this issue seriously. We're talking to organizations that have house-based agendas. HUD, for example,
Okay.
is one of the financial streams. The Environmental Protection Agency, Fair Housing Association, Public School System, those Section 8 organization, the Housing Commission. We're just looking at who's out there, whose agendas touch this issue, and began to sort out what are the possibilities of a more aggressive approach to this problem? How can we accelerate the solution process, and what roles they might play in helping form maybe even a coalition, so that we can put all of our minds together and figure out how to save our children. How do we save our children? They
Because
are
they're not
depending
just
on
over
us.
there, they're right here.
They
Yes.
are depending on us in Grand Rapids. They are depending on us to save them. They are smiling and playing with toys that are killing them.
Wow, that's powerful. We're talking about lead poisoning right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. If you'd like to be a part of our conversation, give us a call at 616-459-4881. In a moment, we're going to take a break and come right back and talk more about lead poisoning. And we're going to find out not only is it in the housing, but is it in our water? Or what is that potential for that? Flint is not that far away.
Yes.
And things that can happen in one area can always happen in another area as well. We're talking to Paul Hahn from the Healthy Homes Coalition of Kent County, right here. Is Kent County or West Michigan?
West Michigan. Yeah.
West Michigan. So you're covering quite a bit of an area. And also Reverend David May, who is Dr. May, actually. We'll have to put that up on the screen for you, PhD, who also is the advisor to the NAACP president,
Cleve
Mr. Jackson is there. And we're going to find out more about what the NAACP is doing locally, nationally. And we want to hear from you. 616-459-4881. We're going to take a break right now, and we will be right back.
That's okay. How you feeling, Paul?
Good.
Am I talking to you?
Keep the passion going. No. And I mean, you helpful.
You're watching Time to Talk with R.G. Holloman on GRTV.
Welcome back to Time to Talk with R.G. Holloman. Here's R.G.
You're what?
Hello, welcome back to Time to Talk. I'm R.G. Holloman, and we're glad that you could join us once again. We're live every second and fourth Wednesday, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. right here on GRTV and WKTV, Grand Rapids, Wyoming, Kentwood, and Gaines Township. And we're live today, and we're talking about not only the Flint crisis, the water crisis in Flint, but also lead poisoning that's here in Grand Rapids and programs that are available to help. Everybody's ears and eyes are open now when we're saying lead poisoning because this is a very, very serious matter. We're live today, and we have as our guest Paul Hahn, Executive Director for the Healthy Homes Coalition of West Michigan, and they work on lead poisoning issues and have programs for that. And also Reverend David May. Dr. May is advisor to the Grand Rapids president of the NAACP. He's also an activist. He's been working on environmental racism issues for many, many years, and this certainly is one of them. What's going on in Flint is actually one of them when you look at a racial justice issue. That's one of them. Our lines are open, 616-459-4881. Let's go to the phones now, shall we, gentlemen?
All right.
Okay. Hello, caller, are you there? We're going to get that first caller. Hello?
Hello, how are you?
We're fine. Thank you. What's your first name?
Sharon.
Okay. Can you have a question or a comment for our guest?
Yes, I want to know if they're going to host a community event so we could talk about it.
That's a great idea. Some kind of town hall event would be wonderful because there's so many questions, so many concerns, and people also many times have very good ideas. What do you think about that?
I think that's exactly right. I think the caller is right on point, and wanting that happen. We want to deal with organizations, but more importantly, we want the people in this community to have voice, to be able to share their thoughts and ideas and their concerns around this issue. So we are trying to magnify this issue to a point that it begins to draw people to a table and say, we really have to solve this together. Mm-hmm. We can't just depend on structures of political structures or social structures or organizations. We have to come together as a group of people who understand the egregious outcome of our young people being poisoned in the very places where they lay down their heads. That's too tragic to stay in the shadows.
Yes.
And I would encourage Paul to help people understand how this disease is affecting particularly the communities of color. We talk about it's rich in zip codes, 49507, 49503, Maybe people don't know what that geographical space, what those boundaries are. And I think once you understand that, then you understand how enraged one can become to know that these kinds of zip codes are predominantly African American and Hispanic. Am I right, Paul?
That's absolutely right. I think I sent you a map, and I don't know if you're...
yes, you did,
folks,
and we're going to put the map up again. We put it up, there it is.
Okay, there it is. Okay, so if you look at this map, that shows, that's data from 2013, so the red dots are the kids with the particularly high levels, and the orange dots are the kids that were also lead poisoned. And you notice there, great, zooming in on that, there's a preponderance of dots kind of on the bottom of your screen. That's the 49507 zip code, so it's Burton Heights, right, and it's a Sika neighborhood. It's on the far southeast side of Grand Rapids there, just out of downtown. And then the other zip codes affected are 49503, which picks up a lot of the neighborhood on the immediate west side there, comes down kind of Granville Avenue, and then up towards downtown. And then the near northwest side, okay, up into, well, it's the west side neighborhoods closest to the expressway there. And so that's where most of our lead poisoning, in the last couple of years, that's represented 2 out of 3 kids lead poisoned in the whole county, right? So we have,
That's
how many kids in the
50%.
county? We have 600,000 people in the county, right? But those neighborhoods have what? 20, 30,000, right? So they are a small part of the county, and they have 2/3 of the problem.
That's a serious issue.
That's
You're
a
watching-
disproportionate amount. I don't know why. I don't know what the percentage markers are, but to me that feels epidemic.
It is an epidemic. That's very serious. That caller, we thank you for your call. That was a great idea and comment. Let's go to the next caller. And as we go to the next caller, also, I just want to say for myself how close this is to home in the sense of I live on Evergreen, and at Evergreen and Blaine, there's an EPA cleanup going on right this very minute.
Wow.
There's some kind of chemical issue, and we're not getting a whole lot of information about it, but they're there 24 hours a day, and they're cleaning up, and they got security guards, and yet something is wrong. Something is wrong, but very serious issue, again, an environmental issue, because what is this chemical issue? Was it in the air, in the water? What has it affected? You know, so very close to home with this. We're talking about
That's close to home for me too. When you look at that map, my church is right there in the middle.
exactly.
Right there in the middle of that cluster of red.
Right.
And you look at those streets, you're looking at Franklin Street and Granville and the Expressway and Hall Street, and that area right
That
there
whole
is very
area.
high. And you know, you think about who lives in those areas. And,
It
so-
affects us in so many ways.
So, yeah.
And by way of example, when you look at those areas, you know, it's one thing to say there's 152 kids, right? Let's put it another way. The kids tested in those neighborhoods, 11.2% of the kids in 49503, 10.9%. So 1 out of 10 kids. So think about that in your neighborhood or in your child's classroom at school or in your church. If you had 1 out of 10 kids
That's a
being
lot of
poisoned,
people.
right?
And it's unacceptable.
Right.
Let's go to this caller. And now I want to hear from you, Reverend Megan. Okay. Hello, caller, are you there?
Yes,
Okay, you got it. Can we get your first name, please?
I'm Serenity.
Okay. What would you like to say today?
I wanted to know, like, what is causing the lead poisoning in the water?
Was
Did
the
you catch
question
the
about
question?
lead poisoning in the water, and you want to know if it's a concern here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've had some, since Flint, we've had some city officials on television assuring the people of Grand Rapids that lead in our water is not an issue, that's a well-monitored and well-controlled system here that makes sure that lead is not in our water and that people should not be concerned about it. And, you know, I don't know that you can take issue with that, but the point is that, you know, we are not necessarily, I'm in particular not focused on what could be, I'm looking at what is. And what is right now is that we have children who are dying in our homes, whose brains are being damaged in our homes now, right now. And that, to me, is a critical issue that needs immediate attention. And you know, Paul can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. The NAACP can't do it alone. We
need
need
everybody
people
to come
in our
together.
community. And I'm not trying to throw out a scare tactic here, because it is not a scare tactic. I'm telling and I'm saying what is actual fact. This is just the truth. And the truth is, and maybe we should be afraid. Maybe we should be afraid. I know if I was sitting on the other side of this television listening to someone say this, I would want to go tomorrow and get my house tested. Because I think the lack of community response has been primarily based upon lack of truth and information that tells the truth about what's happening and how at risk families are, and at such high levels and at such high percentages of infection. That do we know that? And if we know that and we're not comfortable with that, shouldn't we be doing something about it?
Okay. So, caller, does that answer your question? That there's, as far as we know, the water is good in the city of Grand Rapids. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Is it possible if I can ask another one?
Sure.
What was that?
She wants to ask another question.
Oh, another question, yeah. How old are you?
I'm 13.
Oh, okay, all right. I want to say that was your first question was a very good question. That was actually going to be my next question. I'm going to have you come and help me host next help me host next time. Yes, sure, go right ahead with your second question.
How could we, young people or even people, help with the lead in the water, and how can we help support other people?
My goodness, that was my next question. Goodness gracious, you're a good host. Okay, go right ahead. What can people do? I'm going to give people some information too, but there's also other things out there.
So that's a tough question for me sometimes. I think the first thing we need to do is, when we think about what's going on in Flint, is we need to stand with those folks and say that this is a tragedy and it needs to be fixed. And that should be our first priority, fixing the problem in Flint as soon as possible for those kids and getting follow-up services. And so even as a 13-year-old, I personally think sending bottled water may be helpful. But,
Oh, it is.
But one of the things that is extremely helpful is also saying this was wrong and it needs to be fixed, and not forgetting this lesson when we're 23, 33, 43 years old, and remembering it so that we don't go over the same old ground again. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would encourage the caller, because the caller's from our local community, is for them to say, it's a tragedy what happened in Flint. There are kids being lead poisoned in our community, and we need to be equally incensed about the fact that that's happening here, and that the level of services in response to that is not where it needs to be, because we're seeing it again year after year after year. It's going down slowly in Grand Rapids, but I'm losing the patience. We talked about this earlier today. I'm losing the patience to wait for it to get to zero, because at the rate we're going, it's going to be another 30 years to get it to zero. Mm-hmm. Why can't we get on a 10-year plan?
We can get it to zero. We have to get people who have the political will and personal will to really address the issue. And I would say to the caller also, Paul, that Flint has rallied around the issue in a very strong way. At the meeting I was at last night, they presented a 15-point proposal plan that requires to be implemented by local people, by the Flint political system, and the state political system, and the federal political systems. So at that level, things are being done. So the question becomes, well, what can a person like us do to help? The NAACP, the reason I was there last night is because we went to stand in solidarity with the people of Flint.
Okay, all right.
And that was our purpose for being there, and to find out what we could do to help. The message of how we can help as an organization is still coming down the pike. But some of the things that I heard that the people in Flint said was helpful was water. One of the things that they do, there have been donations of water by Myers, by Walmart, by bringing truckloads of water in. But one of the stories last night was that there was a guy coming from Chicago in a pickup truck from Illinois in a pickup truck who stopped in Detroit to get some gas and was asking if they had more water, and he was on his way to Flint. He said, and he had his wife and his kids with him, and he was saying, I just couldn't stay home and see my people suffering like that without doing something. And so he drove up there. So what I'm saying is the two things that people up there talked about as being useful and helpful was water, and the second was filters. They talked about whole house filters. I don't know how to make that work, but there are ways, those are at least two ways that we can be helpful. There are organizations here that will help collect that water and deliver it, because there are particular sites in Flint that you have to deliver it to. So that would be my suggestion is, at a minimum, we can do that.
Right, right. And I do want to say that the organization that I run, in addition to doing Time to Talk, I'm the president and CEO of Community Volunteers Agency, and we're having a bottled water drive. And to find out more about that, just email me at Holliman, that's HOLLIMAN 95 @gmail.com, and we'll tell you the drop-off places. So Holliman95 @gmail.com. And something so simple, water, but it's so powerful. So
Yes.
we need it.
Yes.
We need it for life. We need it for everything. And also, caller, if you still happen to be there, I want you, as a young 13-year-old, to write the governor in your own handwriting. Don't type it, don't email it, write it in your own handwriting and send it to him with your own thoughts about that, and encourage your friends to do the same, because this is really affecting young people most of all, and I think it might have a very powerful, I know it'll have a very powerful impact when you send that information about how this is affecting you. You're concerned about it. Look at it. You called a live television show to ask some really good questions about it because you're worried, you're concerned, you're compassionate, and that makes a difference. We do appreciate your call, and we'll see if we have any other callers. Our lines are open right now for 616-459-4881. One of the things about this, Reverend May and Paul, is it has brought out the compassion in people. People looking at this issue in Flint and going, what? And then they want to step up and they want to help. And, you got all these movie stars and very so-called important people that are really just like, I can do this. I can donate money, I can donate water, I can get involved.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, it's important for everybody to get involved. I think that's exactly what solved the problem in Flint. It took a long time. I mean, people were speaking out for much of the 2 years here, but as there was another voice added, and another voice added, and then we had the voice of Dr. Mona from Hurley, and we had the voice of the researcher from Virginia Tech, adding their information about the lead poisoning. And at a certain point, enough people spoke up. And it caught fire. And I think that's, what's happened here in Grand Rapids with our situation is that we've gotten quite silent about the whole thing. And, if we are concerned about what's happening to the people in Flint, and we are concerned about what's happening to our children in Grand Rapids, it starts by everybody individually speaking up.
And individuals need a forum to speak up in, or a target to write letters to, and who do they, I think if they would get in touch with the Healthy Homes Director Paul here, he would help give them some guidance on who is important to send that message to. Besides the governor, maybe there's some local people here in relation to our condition that need to hear from our young people in our community that we're not satisfied with the level of progress that has been made on our dying children in these neighborhoods that are poisoned neighborhoods by house, by house, by house. And so maybe we need to not lift every voice and sing, but lift every voice and cry out for justice in this realm where it seems that that dying flock of beautiful things is just lying, walking, talking, eating in an environment that's killing them. Young people are dying, are being damaged. How can we not do something? I think if people are, even if this is, if people would agree with me that this is a racial issue, how can you have gone to Institutes for Healing Racism and seminars and workshops and know that this is happening down the street from where you live and do nothing? I think it's a sad commentary on our own sense of a great city having this blight on its very fabric. We need community people to raise their voices, to find those opportunities when they hear about them, to show up and to speak up and to be strong and to say, not this time, not this year, not 2016,
Not on my watch.
not on my watch.
And again, the more voices you add to that, the more action we can take on this. If it's one or two people asking, they'll be taken just so seriously. If there's many more, we can not only be assured that what we're seeking, the end of this problem, can be in sight, but that we can accelerate it, that we can do it a lot more quickly. Again, in Flint, what's happened is enough people have spoken up, and and the world has spoken up and said, make it right, and so it's going to be made right. And that's what we need, across this issue, across communities, is enough people saying, we're tired of it. We can't just leave it to, Healthy Homes Coalition or David May or RG to bring this up and to settle it. It's got all the voices matter immensely, because even if we were to say to our local politician, our state rep or our state senator, we want you to do something about this, they need those voices behind them if they're going to say yes, to propel them forward. So when they go to Lansing and they talk to their colleagues and say, we want to see change, they go, who are you to say? Well, I've got 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people behind me in Grand Rapids that are all crying out and saying, enough, we've got to change the situation.
I think
As we get ready to close, what do each one of you think personally should happen now in Flint?
in Detroit, where?
Flint.
Oh, in Flint. Oh, I think Flint is on a good path right now, and I think they've initiated movement that will lead to resolution, and so I think they're mastering their problem, and I admire them for that. What I'm concerned about is we're not mastering ours,
Right.
and I think every elected official in Grand Rapids ought to be ashamed of what's happening on their watch right here in this city. And
You mean about the lead poisoning?
about the lead poisoning
in
these
houses.
homes. Every elected official not only ought to be ashamed, I would charge them to be complicit in the damage to these children when they do nothing.
It's a very powerful statement.
Yeah, well, I don't care.
Say it again.
They are complicit in the damaging and the death of these young children when they do nothing and know about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to try it and fail, but it's another thing to not try at all.
Mm-hmm.
And
What do you think they should do?
first of all, they should connect with their constituency. They don't have to wait for someone to come to them to say there's a problem. They know there's a problem. This is not new news. This has been going on for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think if I'm representing a particular zone of people in Ward 1, 2, or 3, and if that stuff is happening under my ward watch and I'm not addressing it, shame on me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. And Paul, how can people support Healthy Homes Coalition and also participate? Because we need these children to be tested as
Right.
as we're talking about.
You know, when we started this work a number of years ago, the new effort on taking on lead poisoning, we did a lot of work, particularly in the Baxter neighborhood. And so I'm going to take a lesson learned from that experience, and that is that when we first started doing work there, we got awareness up, and we could only fix so many houses, but yet the lead levels dropped faster than the number of houses that could be fixed. And I'm convinced that's because moms were talking to moms, and moms were talking to dads, and the community was talking to each other about this and becoming aware. So if you've watched the show and you're aware, make sure people around you are aware. That's immensely valuable. And then, frankly, again, if people want to help out our organization, our mission is that children grow up in healthy housing. and that includes lead, we can only get so far if there are not voices behind us. So speaking up and speaking out and calling us, we have a day coming up here on March 2nd where we will be going to Lansing and talking to elected officials. If you want to join us, give us a call. We'd love to have you come because they're your elected officials. You have the same access to them that we do. Let's go talk to them and let them know that it's really, really important. I'm going to be honest with you, until Flint started here, I grew pretty numb on some of this stuff. And so complicit, those are strong words. I'm feeling the sting of them. We all need to feel that sting, and we need to wake back up, and we need to get back on track with this stuff. And if we haven't been involved, we need to get involved.
Okay. Last thoughts before we close? Anything else that you want to
Well,
share?
the caller talked about a town meeting, and that's something that I think we're going to work on and make that happen. I'm committed to making that happen, and I know Paul is as well. He's having a meeting on Monday. I'm thinking some of that will be floated around then. The NAACP and the Healthy Homes Coalition, we're working together on this particular piece, not just the two of us, but there are other entities involved. And so we should have something crafted fairly soon. So if people want to know about that meeting, there'll be something in the Grand Rapids Times about it. They can call my office, NAACP office, and I'm sure they can call the Healthy Homes and get information about when that town meeting is going to take place.
What is your office number?
616-719-3478.
Okay, and Paul, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, if people have ideas about what we need to do about the problem of lead poisoning from paint in Grand Rapids, we want to hear those voices. I mean, we've got ideas. We've been working in this for a long time, but those new voices, those new ideas are always welcome, and sometimes those are the groundbreaking ideas that move us from, a place of comfort to a place of discomfort where we actually solve the problem.
And your website and phone
our
information?
website is healthyhomescoalition.org, and our phone number is 616-241-3300. We want those ideas.
Okay, and last word from you? Word of encouragement for our community?
If you have questions at the more technical level, the people can go online and look at epa.gov/lead, and there's some information there at that level. But my word of encouragement is keep your ears open, stay tuned, because we are not going to let this go unchallenged.
All right. Well, Paul Hahn, Executive Director of Healthy Homes Coalition, and Reverend David May, Advisor to the Grand Rapids NAACP President and activist on environmental racial justice issues. Thank you both for being here on Time to Talk. And I'd like to leave an open invitation for you to come back, maybe in the spring, and let's see where we are. Would you be willing to do that?
Sure.
Okay, wonderful. And I want to thank you for watching and for listening. And we'll be back, Lord's willing, in 2 weeks. Remember, we're live every second and fourth Wednesday, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. right here on GRTV, WKTV, Comcast Cable 25. You have a good one. I'm R.G. Holloman. This has been Time to Talk.
Thank you for watching tonight's edition of Time to Talk with R.G. Holloman on GRTV Grand Rapids and WKTV Wyoming Kentwood. Welcome back to Time to Talk with R.G.
It's the talk of the town in Grand Rapids. Time to Talk with R.G. Holloman on GRTV Grand Rapids and WKTV Wyoming Kentwood.